Hey everyone, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, talk about the art and the science of the things we put on our feet. Today, I am very honored to have Bryan, the CEO and president of Diadora USA, on the podcast with us. And ironically, we had a small world, as turns out, Bryan, you were just actually in the Oregon area talking to a company, Foot Traffic, that I actually used to work for.
Yeah,
there's going to be some interesting connections here, so I am super excited to have you
cool.
on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sweet. Okay. So Diadora is a really interesting brand that, again, has been around for a long time. They started, correct me if I'm wrong, in the 1940s.
Yep.
Really jumped into sports in the 1960s, and have continued to develop. It was only a couple years ago, please correct me, that they jumped back into the US with running stuff and have made, in my opinion, quite the splash in terms of being able to have some really solid footwear, some stuff that's a little different. Is there anything on the Diadora history that I'm missing you think is really important to hit on?
No, I mean, 1948 started in northern Italy, originally a hiking brands, a lot of recreational hiking and skiing brands in that area. Got really into sport footwear you're right, in the 60s. We're always doing running stuff. So we had tons of Olympians and European record holders and stuff. It was never really distributed in the US at any sort of large level. Primarily in the US in its heyday was soccer and tennis. People remember Roberto Baggio, Jennifer Capriati, Bjorn Borg, Boris Becker. They remember all of these things. But we had amazing running brand, great company. So 9 years ago, we really woke up and we're like, the brand is all runners now. And it's a company is just a collection of people. You know, you can't like fake it. I don't know anything about, target shooting. So I can't just create a target. I don't know why I picked that example, but I can't just go create something. It's not in my blood. The brand now is everybody has running in their blood, you know? So if you want to talk about what the grass smells like at tryouts for cross country, everybody knows what that feels like. So we were like, this is it. And the market's at an interesting opportunity because we feel like everything's drifted into this general consumer footwear, like mass appeal footwear when, man, I want to help a kid, break 1250 or 12, I'm talking about a 5K, but that's what I wake up thinking about, not
sweet,
these are all important things. I have to run a company and develop, but there's nobody, I think we are in a very interesting perspective to deliver that.
Yeah. And I would definitely agree. I also saw, I believe there is a Diadora Spike in the works, a track spike, if that's correct.
Yeah. I mean, so the Reset, of course, has to be around the training footwear, and then some of the performance training footwear, including like a traditional tempo shoe, a marathon shoe. But these things, I could talk about a process later, but these things take a while. We don't do things on a traditional quarterly calendar for this. For the market, we do things when they're perfected. So like our carbon shoe took 2 years. Our Spike took 1.5 years, and we're just about to intro it with some athletes and kind of around end of April.
Right, that's awesome.
And then we'll bring it to market next year.
Right. So for the listeners who do not know, and Bryan, I know you are immersed in this, when you develop a shoe, it's not something that just comes to market in a year. There is the development phase where you're like just drawing it up, trying to figure out what this is going to look like, who to be able to market this to, what the purpose of this thing. And then you actually have to build it. You have to test it. That process takes even longer. So kudos, because I know that the process can take anywhere from 3 to 5, if not longer, years to kind of get going and get to market. But it's cool that you're sharing stuff even before like it's ready to go to market, going, hey, this is what we're working on. And that process of going, hey, we're going to put something out when it's ready, not, oh, we have to stick with this 1 or 2 year cycle, I feel like gives you a lot of freedom as a company, right? To go, hey, how can we actually put out what we think is this really good thing, instead of being on that kind of hamster wheel of, I have to get this out, I have to get this out, I have to get this out.
Yeah, but that's correct. This is, I'm sure this is your world. Everybody says, hey, we want to make the best footwear. So how do you actually, how do you do that?
Right.
And I can tell you we have a better outsole rubber. I could tell you, but dude, you're using the same raw materials, right? Like an artist has the same paint. Like Bowie's good, when he's working with Bryan Eno, he has the same organ. It's what he does with it. So the thing you're talking about is a shared value between Enrico Palogato, who's the owner of Diadora, a private company. Claudio Borra is our global CEO, and everybody at the company that, we're creating. And the end result is hopefully a 1250 on the track or faster, like these sort of things. So it's a creation process. But the other thing you said, it's like, it doesn't take a year. It can take a year. If you said, hey, I want to develop a $140 shoe, and you have money, and you call a factory and you say, hey, these are a couple specs, you can do it.
Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah. It's just going to be another thing though. You see in the industry a lot of times when an update comes and you're like, oh, it's not as good as the last, or why did they do this? It's because they're sticking to this timeline based on, a made up calendar instead of trying to perfect the thing. So the approach you're saying gives us freedom, but it's not just freedom for me. It's a shared perspective from our whole company.
Got it. So you're going right into where I want to go is going into what makes Diadora unique. The first thing though, I know you've talked about this and you've done lots of podcasts on this, but I want to intro you a little bit more because the vision and the artistry that you are bringing to the table comes from your unique background as both a punk rock musician and a runner. Would you mind speaking a little bit to kind of your background and what brought you to Diadora before we jump into what makes Diadora unique? And that's what's cool. As I'm a musician, I'm not a punk rock musician. I am a Scottish Irish fiddler, but can still appreciate I can hear an artist. When I'm talking to one.
When you talk about this stuff, when you say punk rock, the Dubliners are as punk as anybody.
That's fair.
You say this stuff, but it's just I love creation. So my background was music. Like I was creating records. But I was playing in bands. I was drawing the labels. I was planning tours, all of this stuff. But it could be, you're really passionate about architecture. It could be really passionate, anything creative. So this might be, in the course of balancing the company, like actually growing a company. Cause dude, I'm competitive. I want to beat other companies the same way when I towed the line in college. I want to beat even my best friend. It's like, it's the weird thing about our sport, you train with all of this group of people, then you still want to beat them, So my background coming from there, I think was really fun because I was always immersed in like creating stuff. Like I was always, creating the flyer for the show, creating a logo for a band, creating songs and recording them, all of this sort of stuff. So I think just that perspective, so when you say, hey, I'm not a punk rock, but you're creating, you love thinking about fiddle, you love thinking about probably Scottish lore. One of my best friends is this guy, Max, who's been at On for a long time. And seeing Billy Connolly live changed both of our lives because the truth he spoke to the way to think about life, it changed our whole life. So maybe it's more I've been somebody who's open to all these perspectives and absorbing them and trying to surround myself with people like that, because it's a different thing than when you just say, hey, I want a person who does XYZ on my company. You have to be creative. You have to start with this other ethos,
So it makes sense that you've done a great job of combining both a background in competitive running, which I know you competed at, was it Stockton University? You did some post-collegiate competing very, very well. Then you worked at Puma and then moved your way to Diadora. But all at the same time, while being a musician, while owning a record label at the same time, correct?
It sounds and then being so big, but I'm talking I was pressing 1,000 of each record, 1,500 of each record. I was running 224, who Galindo Burdeen's our sports director. He won 88. Yeah. He reminds me all the time how pedestrian it is. I've told the story 20 times, but in a board meeting once, he's like, hey, my driver ran 216. Like the guy who drove his car was a 216, letting him know 224 is nothing. And now in 2025, it's even way down on the list. So you're being kind. but
Yeah.
I was just always trying to do things I thought were interesting. I was very lucky to be able to, at the time, wait tables, make enough money, roofing with my dad, things like this, and still be able to put out some records, play music, and run mileage.
Yeah. So what brought you to Diadora then?
I don't know if you planned this, but it's probably a perfect segue because I was at another brand 16 years. I have a lot of great friends there, taught me everything I knew. But the thing that we talked about before, like the passion, you can't do a lot of places because you have different motivations. And if you're at some companies and you want to, I'm totally making up. This is no disrespect to other businesses.
Yeah.
But if you want to be the biggest, you have to make sacrifices in your product, in your distribution, and in the way you think about business. These are things I'm like uninterested in. Like I want our marathon shoe legitimately to be the best in the world. I want I was at Nike regionals. I might have just told this. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I was at Nike
Don't worry.
regionals with my older son in Poughkeepsie, and this one kid I saw in Diadora. I was like, "Hey, awesome shoes." He's like, "Yeah, I got them at Fleet Feet Albany." He's like, "Yeah, it's the only brand that makes real running shoes." And I was like floored because that's what I'm hope happens, right? Like I'm trying to put the purity of the sport that I love, and I call our CMO in the US, Ryan, and we talk about our kids cross country. I call Claudio, who's our global CEO, and talk about his son doing triathlons in Florida. I call, when I'm traveling with our owner Enrico, we're on a run, talk like it's the world, and you can't do that a lot of places. I'm so lucky. So the things you're saying are so kind, but whatever the percentage of life luck is, I maximize that luck to land up where I'm in, given my background.
Got it. So it sounds like what I'm hearing is you, again, using this word, you like having
I never made nationals at D3 and you have a title. So again, putting it in perspective.
No, so I'm also a fellow D3 runner. Yeah. And so all power to that because we come on there without any additional scholarship or got to make our own way. So I'm saying all power to you on that. That's why I was really excited going, wait, Bryan was on D3 Glory Days. I heard him. Wait a minute. He went to a D3 school. Awesome. Cool. So so it sounds like being at Diadora, you really enjoyed and thrive in having the art, and I keep using this word, but like artistic freedom to be able to focus and develop something that you really, really want to. So I think that segues really nicely into my next question of, besides what you bring to the table, what do you think makes Diadora unique and different from a lot of the other competitors on the market now?
Yeah, it's the process. I'm one little part of it, but it's the process of everybody. And you think so that when I talk about how the company thinks about surrounding itself, our sport director, yes, it's Jolene de Bourdin, who won the 88 Olympic Marathon in 1990 Boston. He has, his logs when he trained in Alamosa are legendary. But he's a trained architect, like his passion is creating. To this day, he's an older guy. I go into his notebook. He's doodling logos. He's doodling conceptual ideas of technology. And you can't find those people there. I mean, I'm sure you can. We're not unicorns, but we're pretty we're pretty close. We're pretty close to this perfect marriage of creativity and passion for sport. So going to the question, if we want to make a shoe, let's say a training shoe specifically for a distance runner running 120 miles a week, who's going to race in the 10,000 meters on the track. You think about a little kit, right? Maybe a training shoe, a speed shoe, a spike. Let's simplify it. Yep. So when we want to develop that training shoe, there's specifics around that training shoe. In one building in Carano di San Marco in northern Italy, we Jolindo, myself, a couple of us come up with this idea. We go down to our design lab and we start sketching the idea for the mechanics of the shoe. He's been doing this a long time. He understands the basics of all this stuff. Basics is is not the right word. He's really advanced with our design team. We start to sketch what this shoe should be. We walk over 20 steps to he's the one who is very fluent in mechanics and all of this stuff, and say, this will work, this won't work, try this. And with the design team, we adjust a little bit. Then we walk 20 more, and in his lab, he also can build compounds and first compounds for a prototype. We take these materials, we walk over to the manufacturing part. We have a factory on site. We build the first prototypes. We stitch together the uppers. We attach them to the midsole, and then a group of us go out for a run. And Matt, say you ran 10,000, right? Like if you
5K, 10K,
blah, blah, we all go out for. We come back and we say, hey, I felt something on the Achilles, because even all the data, all of the technical specs, it might not work, right? For realities of foot type. So you come back and you say, okay, let's move back. I'm making it up. Move this back 2 more millimeters, or change the foam, or whatever it is in the collar. We stitch together another shoe, or we adjust that shoe. We have different ways to do it depending on the what we have to do. We go for another jog. Dude, we could do that for weeks and perfect this process, perfect this thing. Once we say, hey, this feels amazing, we go back to the lab, and this gentleman, Michele, who's amazing, he'll say, okay, now he'll lab test it, making sure that not only is it a great shoe, but he'll test competitors in the market, and making sure whatever KPI we pick. I talk about Gara before, but that one's easy because it's easy to understand. It's distance between steps, like the actual compound and the carbon get you a little bit further, even if it's a half an inch or an inch per step or whatever it is. And we make sure it's better than the market. Like, we don't just make stuff that sits in the middle. We don't, because if that happens, if we're in the middle, we'll go back and try to tweak something with the data after we know conceptually it feels great, and we keep this process going until the product is finished.
That's awesome. So what I'm hearing is, it's not just a lot of products will start conceptually and they'll jump right into the lab. You understand, and your team understands, that a lot of it is you got to get it on your foot. And so you are developing it as it's on your foot. And as runners, you're going, what do we want? How do we develop this? How does it make sense? Because one of the key points that people need to understand is that, and I say this as a biomechanist who's in the lab, but also recognizes that my research that I do, there are limitations, because when you do it in a perfect lab setting, it doesn't always translate to the real world. So the more real world testing you can do, the more applicable and probably the better thing you're going to create, because it's actually going to have real validity in terms of being out there on the road. So that's a really cool step that I'm not sure everybody does. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know everybody's process. I for sure know people don't have factories at their headquarters with Italian dudes in who've been doing it for, these are artists, man. Yeah. It's the region we're in is a footwear region. Like, it's known for crafting boots and cycling shoes and soccer boots and hiking items and skiing items. So, my landlord at the apartment I rent used to make soccer boots. Another guy in the complex works for a cycling shoe company. Like, it's everybody the hotel we put everybody at, he used to work for another sport brand. Everybody, it's in there. It's also like, when I talk about running being in our blood, it's that footwear manufacturing in your blood. Our the owner of our company's dad started a footwear company. The CEO, this dude Claudio, when I was working at Taco Bell, my first job, and then Veggie Works, where I was waiting tables, which is like legendary vegan spot in Belmar, New Jersey. Claudio was making insoles in an insole company. His first job, 16 years old. That's our global CEO. This thing is like, it's not something we get into because this is cool. It's because we all generally love it.
Yeah. And there's a very strong history in this part of Italy of being like very shoe and footwear focused. I think a lot of people will talk about different areas of the world. Like, I know Portland, we were just talking about, gets kind of like, oh, this is a big footwear area. It's not quite the same as going to Italy, where they're actually literally making the shoes there and totally making different. The insole. It's a completely different vibe totally and level of history that not totally only is bleeding into the general area and everybody who's there, but also bleeds into, it sounds like, the kind of ethos of what Diadora is making things from scratch, of developing that kind of stuff.
I mean,
Correct.
look, I stare at data all day, right?
Mhm.
Like you can't ignore it. You have to involve it. But coming up as a kid, I read way too many Eastbay ads and bought some new shoe that didn't feel great, you know? And
Yeah.
technology might have been sound, but you start to realize, like, okay, there's some statistical strangeness which you need to quantify in all of this stuff. So that's how. And again, when I talk about luck, I'm lucky I wound up here where all of these views I have are aligned with everybody already at the company.
That's awesome. It's funny that you and I have both had a similar raise, because I did the same thing where I'd order stuff from Eastbay, and I remember being in like high school, college, and going, okay, I like this shoe, I hate this one. Why is this not?
Yeah,
why
yeah.
doesn't this fit? Nobody's explained this, so it sounds like.
Or you cut them open and you're like,
Yep.
oh wait, like I'm not going to pick the shoe. One of my favorite shoes of all time. This is probably 92.
Mhm.
There's a technology inside. I cut it open, and the pot of technology was a size of maybe not a quarter, $50. It was so small. And then I was like,
yeah.
oh, but it was also the softest outsole rubber at the time. And I was like, oh, it's the rubber in the midsole.
Right.
The technology is like part of the story. So, and there's lots of technologies that work amazing. But in this time, I started to wake up with the balance between marketing and the reality. That's why I'm like so tuned to like to marrying all these things, you know?
I totally get that. As someone whose roommates thought he was insane in college, who was cutting up shoes and cutting them in half and going, wait, you like you said, all this advertising happening, but it's mostly just a straight midsole foam and then maybe this little piece in there. And you're like, huh. So what is making this feel like this? And that's very cool that you were able to get through that background and then take that knowledge and now look at the position you're in at the moment.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what design, this is a very general question. I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure how to ask it. So I'm just going to throw it out there. So from your background and since you have this very awesome, deep hand working knowledge, what are some interesting things that are unique to Diadora in terms of how they design and develop footwear, in terms of, and you can take this where you want, in terms of the internal biomechanics, in terms of what things have really stood out to you that make them unique outside of obviously the development process?
Yeah. I'll say, and this is going to be really boring, Matt, but the development process is everything. Mm-hmm. Like our spike we had a spike ready, I don't know, 9 months ago, a year ago.
Ooh.
And yeah, we had some athletes, mm-hmm. but in the lab, it was beating a lot of brands, mm-hmm. but it wasn't competing with, let's say the top couple spikes we wanted to beat. We took more time. We took more research. We spent more money perfecting it. So like that's the difference. The process is the total difference, because in the end, you know, it's using all the things that are available, redreaming them, and taking your time. So we do have some inherent things, like we have one technology that reacts to your foot called Blue Shield in some training shoes, and which is a really, really interesting one. This was dreamed up by Galindo. Like, you know, how do we, you know, for people who need some sort of control, do X, Y, Z. He sketched it in a book. We dreamed it. Like, we did it all internally. But these are all great things. These are all really interesting things. Mm-hmm. The process is the I don't want to say the secret, but it's everything, man. Because I've been down it. I've run in the 2002 version of a shoe. When it changed to 2004, it didn't work anymore, and it broke my heart. You know, taking our time, being deliberate is the key to it all. Yeah.
So that's interesting to me, because it kind of explains, there are some, for me, very unique things that Diadora does. Like, first of all, and I apologize if I mispronounced
that's called the
this.
Mythos Vigore.
Vigore. I knew I was calling it Vigor, and I'm like, I can barely speak English. I'm sure that my Italian pronunciation is going to be terrible. But some of the unique things that I've noticed about the shoe is about these shoes is they have a unique twist of feeling very new age. Like, oh, we've got all the newest technologies, but there's also some more traditional things that I think have been lost in the industry. Like this shoe feels great in terms it feels like a little bit higher heel drop, which is not common, but how the stability does, it's also, you combine the kind of guidance stuff we talk about where, and most Diadora shoes do a great job of keeping you centered in some way. Even like the Nucleo 2, for example, even though it's labeled a neutral shoe, you guys have these really awesome sidewalls and the develop, and like how you do everything seems very intentional. But there's still elements that harken back to when we were running and younger going, wow, I really enjoyed that design. Where is that? So it seems like you've been able to marry some things really nicely without leaving them behind. Like for me, the Vigor was great because because it almost feels like there's a medial post, but I'm not, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not seeing one. So it seems like, yes, for people that want that feeling,
no, I mean,
people,
that thing's really interesting because a traditional medial post shoe, I know it curbs 7 to 10% of pronation. You know, if your foot collapses this much, the best one, this one is better than that. And I take no credit for any of this. You know, it was Galindo and Michele. They released that lateral side. They put some, the way they angled the material. And again, Galindo being an architect is like coming up with, hey, would this work? Would this work? You know, if you go to any engineering school and you try to build a bridge out of popsicle sticks, you know, this is how he's thinking about the structure of this footwear. And it's different than even the Vigore and the Vigore versus the Nucleo, because those are totally different runners, right? The Nucleo is a very experienced recovery day, but making it, how do you make it soft without losing structure? Because you could also be too soft where even a neutral runner starts to pronate, all of this sort of stuff. So it's all the things we consider. It's all the things we consider, Matt.
So it sounds like there's a big focus, because again, we talked about how when you look at the insole, or the midsoles of a lot of shoes, yes, you have your Blue Shield stuff in here. So there's a little bit more going on. But at the end of the day, when it comes to midsoles, it's really, what's the density of the foam underfoot? How's it going to feel? A lot of shoes are just going to, like, if you cut them open, it's just a straight slab of midsole foam. But some of the magic seems to also happen that people, and I certainly am at fault for this, not talking about some of the external geometries about how did you set up the architecture of the shoe? Do you have material that comes out a little bit farther on the medial side versus the lateral? What side collapses a little bit more than one? So it sounds like there's a very strong architectural component in here, which that's a really important story, because that doesn't always get either talked about or addressed, because there's a lot of footwear that they'll do something not because, hey, we want this to like actually perform this way. We're doing it because it looks good. So it sounds like there's a difference where Diadora goes, hey, which makes sense because you're Italian, to go, not only are we going to make this look good, we're going to make sure it actually performs well architecturally. Is that correct?
No, it's I mean, what we're discussing now, if you think about how our shoes are created, the process, who's involved, you start to understand what Diadora is, right? Because you can do a lot of structural things with geometry, and it's easy. And we've fallen into this talking point. Oh, this is 5 millimeters versus 8 millimeters. But dude, if you lower the compression set on that EVA 5 points, the drop doesn't matter because your foot just sinks in, and all of these things. So like, again, coming full circle on this, you have the science, the data you look at, but then you have the, how does it run? How does it last on 100-mile weeks? How does it last on 70-mile weeks? How does it last on gravel? How's it, you do all the anecdotal stuff, you marry the two, and you try to do the best product.
It's nice to hear someone in the industry acknowledge that drop is really relative, and then like midsole compression rates will totally affect that, and the individual will make that totally. So it's like a very unique experience with each runner. But that's also why I think it's important that for people developing them, that you actually get them on foot and test them to go, how does this feel? And trying to get a variety, which then you get into wear testing and stuff like that. And people are going to have very different experiences. But it sounds like you're trying to marry that really nicely, if I'm correct.
Yeah, totally.
Sweet. So it sounds like the follow-up question was going to, what's the inspiration on footwear designs? But let me see if I can interpret this, and then you can correct me, where a lot of your inspiration comes from not only who the runner you're trying to make this for, but also from what do you want out of this shoe? Like, who is this for? What do we want out of this particular thing? Is that correct?
Totally.
And again, it seems like it goes back to the process of how are you developing this?
100%. And when Gelindo is thinking about a tempo shoe, he's thinking about repeats he did in Alamosa in 91, when he's thinking about, when we're thinking about a track spike, we're thinking about, a 5K on the track and what pins feel like and all of these things. So it's the combination of the things I talked about before, but the purity of the actual thing we're creating.
It's cool. So let's jump ahead. What is your favorite Diadora shoe right now? I'm curious.
Oh my God. So we just released this shoe called the Atomo Star.
Yep.
And it has to be my favorite because the process I talked about before, we complete the full circle in-house. So even after we do all the prototyping, blah, 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 we manufacture fully in-house. So and that doesn't exist anymore, right? Outside of Asia, mass production. So to be able to do this in-house is really cool. It is a stamp and it is a nod to this process. It is a nod to the developers. It's a nod to the people putting together, the artists putting together our shoes in our company. It feels amazing that, when I first came to Diadora, I kicked this idea around and people are like, oh, impossible, because we still make soccer boots at the time. We still make luxury goods. But performance running in Italy, it wasn't done. It was like really hard. And I remember talking to Claudio. He's like, yeah, let's fucking do it. Let's figure it out. And I was like, this is my place. I was only there 6 months and I was like, I'm all in, this will be the rest of my career at this place. Cause we're full of dreamers. So I would say for sure this.
So awesome. So the Atomo Star, which I am very curious about. I have not tested yet, but I was really curious as the realm of, is it appropriate for me to call it a super trainer? I want to make sure since I haven't put it on my feet.
God, it's a high mileage neutral trainer that has a really aggressive compound. So you get you get a lot more bounce out of a soft shoe than you would if you're using a regular EVA that really compresses, but doesn't spring back the same way.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that would be your favorite one. And so for what reasons from your own testing do you think that's so let's say outside of the design process on foot, why is that your favorite one thus far?
I mean, I was talking, it's a great shoe. I do my long runs in it because I try to go a little old man faster on still on my longer days.
Wait. Bryan, hold on. Can I ask how old you are?
I'll be 49 in May. So
I have to let you know. So my background, my PhD was in master's runners, and you're not old enough to qualify for my studies.
How old do I have to be?
You have to be 50 and older. Okay. So
I've been telling everybody I'm 50 for like 3 years because it sounds cool. So
yeah,
and I was, my younger son's in 8th grade, so he's not running with the high school team yet. So I ran last 2 years. I've run with him a lot, and he runs he's obsessed. Yeah. And he can't wait that his older brother's on the high school team, and he can't wait to it's his whole life, he follows, he tells me what the young brothers are doing. He tells me what NAU's workout is. He tells me, he's just like those kids. He can't wait to run with his brother's team. Anyhow, he brought me along because he started doing workouts, and I got okay fit. And now I'm like, I kind of want to run fast when I'm 50. So I've been slacking the last 2 months, been really busy, but I got to get my act back together. That said, on foot, I train a lot in this shoe called the Cellula. It's a really nice, let's say, throwback to amazing feel, a little firmer than a lot of us really soft shoes because I still want to, I'll run in the Nucleo too, my recovery. When I want to run I say proper pace, but it's easier when you have a little bit of firmness on you, and the shoe feels great. It reacts great. Yep. And then the Gara, I'm saying every shoe, but the Gara is our marathon shoe. It is sick. It is so fun to run in. It's so fun to race in. I wish I had it when I was racing. Everybody says this, but I was running in cheat EVA that was so, I don't know. This thing is fun. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
It makes me wonder because I'm still from the age when, racing flats were like the Mizuno Wave universe. And there was like maybe a few millimeters of foam between your foot and the ground. You're like, I don't know how I ran the times that we did in that and that was even more advanced than what you were running in. And so it's like, wow, how are we doing this? And imagine what would have happened.
I don't know. The Puma prompt was not advanced. That's what I have my marathon PR. That thing was, I was into Puma because of the Harambe, and I just wanted to rep. And that's how my first job was at Puma.
Yeah.
And I still have the shoes but they are heavy. They are hard. They are slippery. I don't know. They were not great.
This is pre Puma grip outsole. I'm guessing it sounds like.
pre Puma. I forget what it was called, but it is 2003 or something like that.
Got it. So it sounds like there's not so much a favorite shoe for you, but you've got the true runner's arsenal going. Not only do you help develop these shoes with this in mind, but this is also something you internalize going. Each shoe kind of has a different run purpose as well as could be a different runner focus. Is that correct? So you're using all of them.
No, you think about, a cross country team and between all the runners of a cross country team, you need four or five shoes, making sure they're covered. This is what we think about.
Yep. Then and it's interesting because a lot of people are always asking what's the best shoe and trying to help consumers and patients understand there isn't really a best shoe. A lot of shoes are actually tuned and made specifically with either a certain type of runner or a certain type of run in mind. Like that's how they were developed. They were developed at a certain speed at the stuff. And one of the only things we know about injury prevention, like people talk and say all these things, oh, you can prevent running injuries with this. The only thing that consistently has come out is besides strength training has been having a shoe rotation.
Yeah.
That's one of the few ways we really decrease this.
I mean, I'll say two things. I'll say for sure. I mean, it's why we developed the cellular and nucleo together. They're like brother and sister. Like one's a little softer, one's a little firmer. Their stack height is different. They give different experiences. And you're saying, hey, it's strength and shoe rotation, but that builds strength because you're working different things. And then, we're super lucky. This country is unbelievable when it comes to running specialty shops. You were talking about foot traffic and working at foot traffic. Well, but one of your jobs and Sean's team there, when you go in, can help you whether you want to walk your first 5K, when you want to PR in the mile in high school, they'll help you. They're experts at all of that. They take all the information, aggregate all the data they have from every brand, and know how to help people find the right shoes. So we're lucky we live in this age where you have that available.
Yep. Shout out to everybody at Foot Traffic. For those that have been on here for a little bit, know that was one of my first running retail jobs and learned quite a bit and forever in debt. So Sean, the owner, is a phenomenal person.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And so if you're in the Oregon area, it's a great place that we would encourage you to go check out because they've got a variety of things. They are not sponsoring this podcast, by the way.
For sure.
They have no idea that Sean has no idea that I'm talking about this, and everybody else is still there. But I've
only gotten to know him over the last year.
Yeah.
And then yesterday we found out we knew similar people, the same people in Alaska because he ran, D2 at Anchorage. And that's a hoot because like training up there is gnarly. It's awesome. It's beautiful. Yeah. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been, but it's gnarly in the winter. You got to be a certain type of dude. And he's that dude. He's really, this is
that's awesome.
Ad for Sean more than
this ad for Sean. That's awesome.
Story. Yeah.
So I'm curious, off topic, because you get to travel internationally quite a bit, not just, and a lot of people in the running industry that are in your position will, but you also get to do that because the home base is in Italy. So you've gotten to experience a couple different running stores, and you mentioned how lucky we are in the US to be able to have that depth. Is that not the same throughout the world when you go to other countries and look at run retail?
So you go to Runaway in Milano and it's amazing. Yeah. Like the owner is amazing. I mean, he just was texting me this morning because he went to a Biohazard show and was giving, which is like an old hardcore band, and giving the owner cellulas or giving the singer cellulas. This dude Luca, he's unbelievable. It exists.
Yeah,
we have 1,500 stores here. You have great retailers. You have great people. You go into. I'm going to go run with the owner of, I'm in Flagstaff now. I'm going to run with the owner of Run Flagstaff in the morning. I mean, these are guys who love the sport, who are obsessed with it. I think we're just ahead of the globe. I think we have a lot more. So if you're in, I don't know, Peoria, Iowa City, you can find a spot, where that the same breadth, the same depth isn't everywhere.
Got it. So we have to be very thankful for what we have. And so our local run retailers, we got to definitely go support it.
100%. Yeah.
That's awesome. Sweet. Well, Bryan, I really appreciate your time. This has been really awesome. And we always pride ourselves to try to bring very interesting people on here to help educate people about not only the shoes that they're putting on their feet, but kind of the background process. And I really appreciate that you've done a great job of explaining and exploring kind of not only what goes into the development of footwear, but also what makes Diadora unique in that way. So if you were going to leave a final message for the listeners going, hey, why should you consider a Diadora running shoe? What would it be?
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm repeating myself. Some things I might have even said today is I'm way more like you talked about music before. Like there is no way the Pogues were ever writing a song hoping somebody would like the song. Fairy Tale of New York didn't come out. Dirty Old Town was not like, hey, I really hope this consumer but people who love the Pogues, like ride or die. And I'm sure that our approach will be appreciated. Similar to the Pogues, I guess, but like in this vein, like I can't control consumer behavior. I could try to create the best running shoes possible with the amazing people I have around me.
That's awesome. So it's not just a great product, but also an amazing team.
We're doing a lot of Dubliners, Pogues.
This is awesome. Yeah, this is the only episode where we've had the Dubliners, the Pogues, and Billy Connolly reference, which is awesome. Yeah.
Like, if you listen to him talk about our global CMO is this dude Antonio, and we talk about comedy as like the probably most prolific art form that is not appreciated. Billy Connolly has said 2 or 3 things that have changed my life. The way I think about nationalism, the way I think about let's call it bro culture, the way I think about art, changed my whole perspective, flipped me around from that dude telling jokes. He's amazing.
Got it. So what I'm hearing so comedy is an underappreciated art form. So when my wife and my students are complaining about my jokes, I can tell them that you're just not appreciating the art form. I will also
use this. I'll use this line with my family too, especially my kids, because they have no patience for it.
It's the dad jokes, right? It's like it's an inherent part of who we are.
Yeah, and you fall into it. Like once it starts, you start playing your role harder and harder. I don't know why. Like someone's not even funny. You're just like you want to upset them. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just as my wife says, she works with behavioral. She's a psychology major and works with children with autism. So she always looks at me and goes, "You're just attention seeking." But I'm like, that's not a bad thing, right? It's just part of who we are as dads, right?
Maybe that's terrible. Now I'm going to be thinking about that. I'm glad this is not my wife's professional skill set. She's a linguist, so she just makes fun of that. I only speak English, and I've been in an Italian company for 8 years, and I'm still on the same level of Duolingo, like a weirdo.
Well, I'm not judging because today I've learned that I've been pretty much pronouncing, other than the Gara, I've been pronouncing most shoes slightly off, which also speaks to my inability to do anything but English, and even that's a little bit struggle. So
again, 9 years here. My one of my really good friends, the director of global sales, this dude Davide, still corrects me when we go out. Like my pronunciation, like he loves it. I think he really enjoys this. So
he enjoys. Okay, so
I'm the same way.
There's a benefit to it. So that's awesome. Yeah. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for coming on and lending us some of your time. It's been really cool to be able to dive into Diadora. We have several of the shoes up and reviewed. Where's the best place to find you, by the way? If somebody has questions or they want to reach out, what would be the best place?
LinkedIn or something like that, probably.
Got it. Okay.
Or
You've got a
running around
phenomenal.
Philly. I don't know.
Okay, got it. So he's got a really great, awesome LinkedIn. You can also find us on a variety of places. We obviously have this up on Spotify, iTunes. The video will come out on YouTube.
Cool.
And then we have lots of different spots that you can always engage with us and others. So we'll, Bryan, if it's okay, we also post on LinkedIn, so we might link you there if people have questions about the brand.
Awesome.
But again, really appreciate you coming on. And for those of you following us, we're all going to have lots of great content. We're looking forward to being able to put this out. And as always, let us know in the comments if you have any questions, because the whole point of this thing is helping educate not only ourselves, but you. And Bryan, thank you so much. You've done a great job. And I look forward to hopefully having you on again.
No, cool. Matt, thank you so much.